This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Today we will be discussing about proliferative diabetic retinopathy and management of diabetic retinopathy. So, till now, I think the pathology of diabetic retinopathy and various types of classification of diabetic retinopathy, how to classify diabetic retinopathy, what is non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy, and what is proliferative diabetic retinopathy. All these topics you must have just heard the names. So basic pathology in diabetic retinopathy is the person first should have diabetes, and it should be of minimum at least 5 to minimum at least 10 years duration before the features of diabetic retinopathy develops. So it progresses through various stages. The first stage is non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy, and the next stage is proliferative diabetic retinopathy. This proliferative diabetic retinopathy is a dangerous stage. Why? Because it can threaten the visual acuity of the patient. The patient can have sudden visual loss. So, identifying the features of proliferative diabetic retinopathy is very important during the screening of diabetic retinopathy. You have to rule out whether any signs of proliferation are present. This proliferation is commonly seen in patients who are already diabetic for more than 10 years or who have been having diabetes for more than 10 years. So usually it progresses from non-proliferative stage to proliferative stage. Am I audible to all of you? Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. So today we will just try to understand what is basically proliferative diabetic retinopathy and how do we manage a case of diabetic retinopathy. The whole and sole etiology for this diabetic retinopathy is patient having diabetes, and other factors like hypertension and any other systemic diseases can aggravate this condition. Okay, so first thing and foremost is patient having diabetes. You have to diagnose diabetes whether this patient is having good blood sugar control or not. What is his lipid profile? Is he having hypertension or not? So these are the basic systemic factors which have to be checked in all patients with diabetes, because if these are not in normal parameters, then the patient is having a high risk of going into proliferative diabetic retinopathy. So now let us dissect the term or dissect the term proliferative diabetic retinopathy. Proliferative. Now proliferative means what? There is a proliferation. What proliferation? Proliferation means growth. What is the growing in the retina? There is fibrovascular growth. The fibrous tissue and vascular tissue grow apart from the normal blood vessels which are present in the retina. So there is a fibrovascular growth. Now, if there is a fibrovascular growth, what is the problem? Now, what is this fibrous growth? Fibrous growth is there is fibrous tissue which grows, which forms another layer over the retina. So now, what does it do? It pulls the retina. It causes traction. So once it pulls the retina, because of traction, because of pulling pressure, it causes retinal detachment. Suppose this traction is present on some blood vessel or some new blood vessel which has grown due to proliferation, or new blood vessel which has formed due to proliferation. What does it do? It causes hemorrhage. So this hemorrhage, what will it? There are different types of hemorrhage, but for the simplicity sake, we will take vitreous hemorrhage. So once the vitreous is filled with blood, what happens? There is a sudden visual loss. So identifying this proliferative diabetic retinopathy is very important. So what else? Why does this fibrous or vascular proliferation occur? What is happening in diabetes? In diabetes, the blood vessels, the endothelial cells are damaged. The normal lining endothelial cells of the vessels are damaged. There is loss of pericytes. So all this will cause coagulation and various coagulation cascade which occur in the blood vessels, and there is sometimes leakage, all these factors lead to hypoxia. Hypoxia means there is no enough oxygenation for the retina. So retina is nothing but a cluster of nerves. There are various nerves, receptors, and so on. The rods and cones, the bipolar cells, ganglion cells, and so on. So these require a lot of oxygen, which is supplied by the blood. Now this blood is becoming hypoxic. Hypoxic means because either because of leakage or because of some coagulation which is occurring within the retinal blood vessels. It is causing hypoxia. So what will happen if hypoxia occurs? If hypoxia occurs, there is a release of factor called as vascular endothelial growth factor, VEGF. So this factor, vascular endothelial growth factor, what does it do? It increases the proliferation. Normally, VEGF is present in the retina, but it is kept under control, or there is an auto regulation of that. When there is hypoxia, there is an excessive production of this VEGF, which causes increased proliferation. So this increased proliferation leads to fibrovascular proliferation. So this is the basic overview of proliferative diabetic retinopathy. So even if you want to manage a case of diabetic retinopathy, you have to tackle the systemic factors and you have to tackle the local factors. That we will go into that one by one. So first, before we go into the topic, first let us see what is normal retina. How does a normal retina look like? Now this is the, once you peep into the eye through the pupil, you dilate the pupil with the tropicamide and you peep into the eye. This is what you see. These dark red vessels which are there, which I am showing with the arrow, these are the veins. Okay, and this light red color which are there, these are the arteries. Okay, so now this is superotemporal, this progresses into superonasal, this is inferotemporal, this is inferonasal. So broadly they branch out like that, and they go further and they further branch out, forming first order branching, second order branching, and so on. Now this is the optic disc. This is the optic disc. This big circle which is there is called the optic disc. The central small, that whitish circle is called the optic cup. From this cup, the blood vessels enter into the eye and they bifurcate and so on. So once they divide, and they divide into various branches. Now this space between the superior arcade and the inferior arcade is called this whole area is called as macula. So the central part of the macula is called as fovea. Okay, so this is how a normal retina appears. When you see a patient fundus, or when you see a patient's retina after dilating the pupil, this is what you should be able to see. Now what happens in proliferative diabetic retinopathy? It usually affects 5 to 10% of the diabetics. An increased risk is present in IDDM. Why there is an increased risk? Because IDDM starts at very early age. It starts around in teens or in around 20 years of age, and the duration is more. So the chances of proliferation are very high. 60% of the patients after 30 years of age, they usually develop this type of problem called as proliferative diabetic retinopathy. Now if you see in this particular picture, you see these are the branching veins and the arteries, superotemporal and inferotemporal. You see the veins are very much dilated. The veins are very swollen. That is one important thing. And you can see a lot of new vessels. You can see irregularly forming loops, forming new blood vessels are there on the disc. So this is called as neovascularization of the disc. Similarly, when these new vessels develop in the peripheral arcade or along the blood vessels, apart from the disc, wherever there are new vessel formation, that is called as neovascularization elsewhere. So these two are the classic features of diabetic retinopathy. When you are examining a case of diabetic retinopathy, if you see NVD or if you see NVE, that patient has progressed to the stage of proliferative diabetic retinopathy. I will repeat it again. When you see a patient with NVD or NVE, that patient is labeled as having proliferative diabetic retinopathy. How do you classify? Once you have diagnosed a patient to have proliferative diabetic retinopathy, the next thing is what stage? How serious is this proliferative diabetic retinopathy? So they have identified few risk factors for that. They are called as high risk factors or high risk conditions or high risk characteristics. So these is called as HRC, high risk characters. Based on the presence of these high risk characteristics, you diagnose the patient to have early PDR or PDR with HRCs. So for the first stage is if the patient is having only NVD or NVE without high risk characteristics, it is early PDR. If the patient is having high risk characteristics with the PDR, then it is very grave condition. You have to act immediately. So now what are those factors which decide whether the patient is having HRC or not? HRC is nothing but neovascularization of disc 1/4 to 1/3 of the disc area with or without vitreous hemorrhage or pre-retinal hemorrhage. It simply means that the neovascularization on the disc is progressing from 25 to 33 or 35% of the disc. 25, more than quarter of the disc is occupied by neovascularization of the disc, and there is vitreous hemorrhage and also pre-retinal hemorrhage. If the neovascularization is less than 25% of the disc with the vitreous hemorrhage, then also it is a HRC. If there is a NVE greater than the disc area, then with the vitreous hemorrhage or PRH, pre-retinal hemorrhage, that is also PDR with HRC. That means the NVE which is present elsewhere, the neovascularization which is present elsewhere is of the size of the disc. We have seen the what is the disc. Now this is the disc. This is the disc. This complete disc area, if 25% of the disc area is involved, that is an HRC. 25, more than 25 to 33% is involved, that is HRC. Even if it is less than 25%, if it is associated with vitreous hemorrhage anywhere in the retina, then also it is HRC. If there is an NVE which is greater than half the disc area with vitreous hemorrhage or pre-retinal hemorrhage, that is also a HRC. It simply means to say that if the patient is having PDR, how serious is the PDR? You have to act immediately or you have some time. If early signs of PDR are there, you have some time. So, but if the patient is having PDR with HRC, he is at a risk of losing vision at any time. So that is the purpose of classification as far as PDR classification is concerned. The next most important thing in a patient with diabetic retinopathy, when will the patient with diabetic retinopathy have decreased vision? What is the patient, what are the conditions where the patient is likely to have decreased vision? If you see in this particular picture, this area which we decided as the macula, if you see, there are a lot of yellow spots in the central area of the macula. These are nothing but hard exudates which are present in the central area of the macula. So these hard exudates are nothing but lipid material which are present in the central area of the macula. So that can cause decreased vision. So when there is leakage, what is happening? There is swelling of the macular area. The retina swells there. So that is called as macular edema or diabetic maculopathy. So now this is the FFA picture. FFA is nothing but fundus fluorescein angiography, where you inject a dye called fluorescein and you see what is the amount of non-perfusion areas. If you see here, there are so many new vessels forming, and there are some areas of non-perfusion. Here there is some area of non-perfusion. You can see the foveal avascular zone. This is the central zone where it is avascular. It is increased in size. All this indicate that the patient is having severe proliferative diabetic retinopathy. If you see here in this particular picture, a lot of small aneurysms are there all over the vessels. These are all aneurysms, small dots which are present all over the vessels. And this is the example. And as I had discussed, fibrovascular proliferation. If you see in this particular picture, there is a lot of fibrous proliferation in the retina. You can see here there is a lot of fibrous proliferation in the retina. So this is fibrous proliferation. What does this do? It causes traction on the retina. Once it causes the traction on retina, it causes retinal detachment associated with vitreous hemorrhage. Now this picture here is a picture of OCT. This is the latest investigation. Apart from fundus fluorescein angiography, the latest investigation which is available to analyze the layers of the retina. Now, these are all layers of the retina. The cut section of the retina, you can see how the retina is being pulled upwards by traction, by fibrous proliferation. So this is the retina is swollen here, and in the central part, and it exactly tells how much amount of swelling is there. So it is mainly to assess the effect of treatment. Now, if a patient is having macular edema, what is the significance of macular edema? When you have to treat a macular edema, macular edema is nothing but when there is swelling of the retina in the center of the macula. That is called as retinal. Now, this is the macula. Here you have the fovea. When there is a retinal edema within the central 500 microns from the center of the fovea, this is an area of edema which is occupying within 500 microns of the center of the fovea. This is called as retinal edema within the center of within 500 microns of the center of the fovea. Similarly, edema with hard exudates within 500 microns of the center of the fovea. If there is an area of one disc area, this is disc. This disc area is nothing but edema. This edema size, the size of this edema should be almost to the size of the disc. So if this edema is occupying the central 15 from the center, if you take 1500 microns in the area, and there is an area of retinal edema which is occupying within one disc diameter of the center of the fovea, then you think of macular edema. Now, these are the characteristics. These three are the criteria which define whether this macular edema is clinically significant or not. What do you mean by this clinically significant? When there is a clinically significant macular edema, the vision of the patient is affected. So what are the criteria? When there is a macular edema, when does it affect the vision of the patient? You are going to treat the patient when it is threatening the vision. So if this macular edema is following these three criteria, then we talk about clinically significant macular edema. So once you have diagnosed the patient to have NPDR, that is non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy, or PDR with or without clinically significant macular edema, then what are you going to do? How are you going to manage the case? So what are the current modes of management of a case of diabetic maculopathy? If the vision of the patient is good, and on OCT, the thickness of the central part of the retina is less than 250 microns, you don't do anything, you just follow. And if the patient is gradually improving after giving anti-VEGF injections, you continue the anti-VEGF injections for 4 to 6 months. Every month you give an injection and see how is the status. If no improvement is seen, then you give lasers or steroids injections, and lasers is nothing but burning of retina. So what does a laser do? Laser is nothing but it burns the retina. What is the use of burning the retina? it converts hypoxic retina into anoxic retina. So anoxic means absolutely no oxygen is required. The retinal tissue is completely burnt out and damaged. So once no oxygen is required, there is no proliferation of VEGF. So that will decrease the formation of new vessels, and that is why we give lasers. If it is in spite of all this, if it is worsening, you either retry laser and steroids, or you just leave it alone. You don't do anything much. You cannot do much more beyond that. Okay, so this is the general guidelines. How do you go about treating? You give anti-VEGF injections and see, monitor the vision. If it is gradually improving, if there is no improvement, you give lasers and steroids, and if it is still worsening, then nothing much you can do. So these are the basic modalities of management of a case of diabetic maculopathy or diabetic macular edema. Laser, intravitreal triamcinolone acetate, that is nothing but steroids. Ozurdex is nothing but dexamethasone. It is also an intravitreal steroid. Anti-VEGF. These four are the main lines of treatment which are available for the management of diabetic retinopathy or diabetic macular edema. So now let us see what is the approach for a patient with diabetic retinopathy and having macular hard exudates or CSME and so on. So you see the patient, you see there are a lot of hard exudates in the macula. What do? You just you just follow up the patient and you ask for a lipid profile. If the lipid profile is normal, what you do, and if the lipid profile is abnormal, you first treat the hyperlipidemia. Hyperlipidemia is treated, and then once the hyperlipidemia is treated, then you give grid laser. Laser, there are various varieties like focal laser, grid laser, modified grid laser. What are all these? I will be telling that in a short while. But first thing, what you have to do, if the patient is having a lot of hard exudates which is causing macular edema, you have to first identify what is the cause of hard exudates. Is it because of hyperlipidemia or normal lipid profile? If the lipid profile is normal, then also you can treat with grid laser, or you can try anti-VEGFs or intravitreal triamcinolone acetate or intravitreal steroid, or combination of these two with the grid laser. So anything, treatment parameters remain the same: anti-VEGF, lasers, intravitreal steroids. So these three are the main lines of management of a case of diabetic retinopathy. Now, if you see in this picture, to understand what is focal laser and what is grid laser and what is modified grid laser. So now if you see in this particular picture, this is the fundus fluorescein angiogram picture. You can see a lot of small white dots, hyperfluorescent white dots. These are all nothing but microaneurysms. So when these wherever these microaneurysms are there, for example, there are a lot of microaneurysms here in this area. You identify that area on FFA, and then you give lasers. So these are all laser spots. Wherever microaneurysms are there more, you give laser spots. So that means wherever you are seeing MA or microaneurysms on fundus fluorescein angiography, you are identifying those areas and shooting those areas with laser. You are burning those areas. So that is called as focal laser. Means it corresponds to area of maximum microaneurysm. So if you see this particular area, you are giving laser in that particular area. So wherever, say for example here, in this particular area there are few more microaneurysms, so you are giving lasers in that particular area. So here wherever one or two microaneurysms are there, they have given lasers here. Now this is focal laser. Wherever there is leakage, wherever you are identifying microaneurysm, you are giving focal laser. Now what is grid laser? Grid laser is nothing but when there is edema. If you see this particular fluorescein angiography, there is a diffuse hyperfluorescence in the macula. Means this complete area is edematous. You cannot identify a point leakage. So that so what you do there, you give a grid. Grid is nothing but you just give lasers all around wherever there is a diffuse leakage. So that is called as grid. So this grid or this macular, this is called as grid laser. When you combine grid with the focal, Some areas you give focal, say here he has given laser spots 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. Here they have given grid. When you combine both of them and then you give laser, then it is called as modified grid laser. Means you give focal plus grid. That time it is called as modified grid laser. So these are the basic techniques by which you give laser. Now this is laser. This laser is given only within the macular area for diabetic maculopathy. Now what do you do if the patient is having proliferative diabetic retinopathy? In proliferative diabetic retinopathy, how do you go about treating the patient? Now here is a picture which shows effect of anti-VEGF. If you see, this is a picture, a diabetic FFA picture. They have taken a cut section by OCT, and you can see here, this is there is a lot of edema, lot of cystic spaces within the layers of retina. The retina is swollen here. After giving anti-VEGF, what has happened? The edema has come down. The thickness of the retina has settled down. So that is the use of anti-VEGF. It decreases the edema, it prevents neovascularization, and it prevents the progression of diabetic retinopathy. Now this is a classical example of grid treatment and focal treatment, which I have already discussed. This is again to reiterate the same thing for diffuse retinal thickening. So whenever you are having macular edema, or the patient is having macular edema in the whole area, you give grid laser. And when you are suspecting some small point-like lesions or point-like leakage, then you give focal laser. So now what is the parameters? For every laser, you set up a parameter, the size of the laser spot and the duration. So these are parameters which have been mentioned here. What do you try to achieve by that? That will bring the amount of burning on the retina. So you set the parameters on the laser machine and then you treat the patient. Now if you see proliferative diabetic retinopathy, what are the indications of treatment of proliferative diabetic retinopathy? So now we will go into proliferative. So what are the various options we have just discussed? First is laser, second one is anti-VEGF, third one is intravitreal steroid. So these three are main options for treatment of diabetic retinopathy. Systemic factors treatment or systemic factors improvement is also very important. If the patient is having hypertension, it has to be controlled. If the patient is having hyperlipidemia, it has to be controlled. So apart from the systemic treatment, this is the local treatment. Local treatment, you have three options: laser, intravitreal steroids or anti-VEGFs, and mainly anti-VEGFs we use. So now, when do you treat a case of proliferative retina? Now, if you see here, there is neovascularization of the disc. It is more than 1/3 area of the disc. Now, this is half of the disc. You can see here there is neovascularization. Here there is neovascularization. More than half of the disc is having neovascularization. And this is an example of vitreous hemorrhage. Because of neovascularization, vitreous hemorrhage has occurred, and there is neovascularization also over the disc in this particular region. Now this is NVE. You can see there is fan-like proliferation of new vessels all over along the branches. So this is NVE, which is more than the size of the disc, normal disc, and there are some areas of hemorrhages here and there. So these are all indications for treatment. That means basically when there are high risk characteristics associated with the proliferation of NVD or NVE, you have to treat the patient. Treatment options, again, as I will reiterate, treatment options are anti-VEGFs, lasers, and intravitreal steroids. So now coming to laser photocoagulation. So laser photocoagulation, what do you do where in case of PDR? So how do you treat a case of PDR? In PDR, as I said, the retina is completely hypoxic and it has progressed severely to PDR. So what do? You give lasers all around. This is the disc and this is the macula. Leaving the macular area, you give lasers all around, complete 360 degrees lasers, and the burns will appear something like this when you give lasers. Around 2000 to 3000 burns are given all over the retina. So that you need not give in a single sitting. the patient is these laser burns are given over a period of 2 to 3 sittings. So you burn the complete retina. So what is happening? The hypoxic retina is getting converted into anoxic retina, which is preventing the further proliferation of new blood vessels, and it decreases macular edema also over a period of time. So if you see here, now this is a case of PRP. You can see the disc here, the central macular area is spared, and the laser burns are given all around 360 degrees. But in spite of that, there are few new vascularizations still developing, and patient has developed new vitreous pre-retinal hemorrhages again. So this is a poor case of PRP, or some poor response to PRP. In spite of all the treatment, whatever has been tried, the patient has the proliferative diabetic retinopathy has not regressed. So a retreatment is required in this particular case. So if you see in this particular case, where the lasers are given all 360 degrees everywhere around, sparing the macular region, then you can see the ghost vessels are present and fibrous tissue has regressed and disc is very pale. So all this indicate that it is a good involution. The patients, the lasers, due to lasers, the patient has responded well. If we, here you can see the fibrous proliferation which is there, which is also regressed. So this is a case of good response to PRP. So we have discussed about the medical management, but sometimes patient develops vitreous hemorrhage very severely, or there is a tractional retinal detachment. Then you are not able to give lasers or intravitreal steroids. Then what do? Where is the blood? Blood is in the vitreous hemorrhage. So you have to remove the blood from the vitreous hemorrhage. So what do? You do a vitrectomy. So what are the indications for vitrectomy in a patient with proliferative diabetic retinopathy? When there is a severe persistent vitreous hemorrhage. Severe persistent vitreous hemorrhage means the hemorrhage has not resolved in spite of waiting for 2 to 3 months, which has not got absorbed. Then you try to remove the vitreous hemorrhage. If there is tractional retinal detachment, you can see there is a retinal detachment here. There is a retinal detachment here. So it also requires surgical management. And dense premacular vitreous hemorrhage or premacular hemorrhage. There is a premacular hemorrhage here. Blood is in front of the macula. Absolutely, patient will not have any vision. Here you can see severe proliferation of the new vessels around on the disc and around the vessels. Everywhere there is proliferation. So whatever, all these cases where you just cannot manage medically, you just cannot give lasers or intravitreal or manage medically completely, such patients require surgical management. You do a complete vitrectomy, and intraoperatively only you give lasers on the table. You give PRP, or you can give PRP later, or to some amount of, to some extent you can give lasers. So surgically you manage a case when there is retinal detachment, or the vitreous hemorrhage is very severe, or it is in the center occupying the macula, or it is unresolving vitreous hemorrhage. All these cases are indications of vitreoretinal surgery, or indications for vitreoretinal surgery or pars plana vitrectomy followed by ILO or indirect laser therapy. So to summarize, what has to be done in diabetic retinopathy? If there is macular edema, what are the options? You have laser photocoagulation, intravitreal steroids or anti-VEGFs, or you can combine these two appropriately and see what is the best for the patient. If the macular exudate is, if macula is filled with hard exudates, then what do? Control hyperlipidemia or treat hyperlipidemia, and then you give intravitreal steroids and give focal laser. If there is macular ischemia, means in some cases when there is non-perfusion of the macula, then lasers are of no use. So in such cases you have to screen for nephropathy, and focal laser for thickened retinal avascular zones other than FSH should be tried. So these are the basic management for diabetic maculopathy. And if there is a thickened posterior hyaloid, thickened pre-retinal membrane, macular traction, which can cause tractional RD or macular ectopia, surface wrinkling out. Basically, when there is a proliferation over the macula, that it can be in the form of hyaloid, thickened posterior hyaloid, or the posterior face of the vitreous, or where there is a thickened pre-retinal membrane, that is nothing but fibrous proliferation over the macula. Then the only option which remains is to do vitrectomy. So you have basically four main principles of management. First, intravitreal anti-VEGFs, intravitreal steroids, laser therapy, and then surgical therapy. All these four combinations can be used appropriately, seeing the condition of the patient. Not that you have to use all four at a time. Any of these options can be used appropriately depending on the severity of diabetic retinopathy. So that concludes today's class. Thank you.